Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Belgium once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel quite a few times before. These guys are a brewery that really hold a bit of a special place in my heart because they were kind of my gateway into a whole other universe of beer, and I've just been exploring this kind of beer group, if you like, ever since. But the beer that we're looking at today is a little bit of a special release for them. It's part of one of their established series of beers, I guess we could say, but it's a new sort of sub-series within that has only just released as of 2023. But I have actually tried this beer before. I know that it's very, very good, but I wanted to leave it a few months and try this one again and do a proper sit-down review of it. So yeah, needless to say, I'm really, really curious to try this beer again. Hopefully it's as good as I remember. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the Flanders or Vlaanderen region of Belgium, which is the Flemish Dutch speaking region. We're going to go to the city of Roeselare, which happens to be home to the wonderful Brouwerij Rodenbach. So this particular beer is called Rodenbach Evolved. It's part of the Grand Cru series. It comes in at 6% ABV, and this one is a Flanders Red Ale. So yeah, this one should be really, really interesting. The Grand Cru series that Rodenbach do, these are blends that compose 67% or 2/3 older ale, and 33% or 1/3 younger ale. So in the case of this one, the older ale part of the blend has been aged for 10 years, and normally it's about 18 months actually that most of the Rodenbach beers are aged, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think this one will be very, very interesting to try again, and I know that this is pretty damn good. The only thing that really surprised me about this one when I came back to it was that it is only 6% ABV, because I thought it was higher actually from memory. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we got on. Definitely nice to return to Brouwerij Rodenbach, and as you know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of the Flanders red style and indeed the more kind of malty side of the beer spectrum. But these guys were really my kind of gateway into getting more interested in sour beer, of course. Then came the lambics, and of course you've got all the modern sour beers out there as well now. But yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brouwerij Rodenbach before, and we will no doubt add more to that list as time goes on. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging systems. Just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Belgian playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to whenever we get the opportunity. But I do hope we can start adding to the Belgian list a little bit more regularly going forward actually, because it has been neglected on the channel over the 10 years or so that we've been going. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very, very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Rodenbach once again then. So, as I mentioned to you already, Brouwerij Rodenbach are based in Roeselare in West Flanders, West-Vlaanderen, in the western part of Belgium. They're kind of located in the middle of Lille in France and Bruges in Belgium. But the brewery was founded back in 1821 by the four Rodenbach brothers. This was Pedro, Alexander, Ferdinand and Constantine. So the brothers basically agreed to work as partners for 15 years, and at the end of this period it was Pedro and his wife Regina who took over the running of the brewery. But later on in 1864 the brewery was taken over by their son Edward, and under his guidance it saw considerable growth. But Edward's son Eugene took over the brewery in 1878 after travelling to England to learn how to age and blend beers, and it was this that Rodenbach would of course become famous for. But Eugene unfortunately produced no male heirs, and thus the company became a limited liability corporation, with the majority of the shares remaining in the hands of the Rodenbach family up until 1998. At this point, the company was bought by Pam Brewery Group, who also brew the Bohn or Boon beers. Not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but this company is in turn owned by Swinkels family brewers, which was previously known as the Bavaria Group, and these guys are of course one of the big producers in Belgium and the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. But today this brewery produces in excess of 180,000 hectolitres of beer per year, so that's 1.8 million litres. And they are known for the Flanders red sour beers. So yeah, that really is everything that I can tell you about Brouwerij Rodenbach just now. They have 5 main beers that they produce: the original, the Grand Cru, the Alexander, the Vin de Cereal, and there is another one which is not coming to my mind at the moment. But yeah, within all of those 5 categories, I think you have 1 or 2 different kind of series, sub-series within those, and then of course you've got all the different vintages, and you will get special edition things coming along every so often. Like quite recently we reviewed the Red Triple, which was a really interesting blend of beer actually. So yeah, if you want to learn more about Brouwerij Rodenbach, you can of course check out their website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've produced over the years. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. There you can see the lovely Rodenbach R at the top here. I will be keeping this bottle of course, because this is the very first edition of Rodenbach Evolved 2023 vintage. But yeah, like I said earlier, this one comes in at 6% ABV. Flanders red, the old Brune style is of course quite similar to this one in terms of flavour profile, but there are a few kind of subtle differences. But it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the back. I'll just let you see that it has this kind of corked top on it as well. But yeah, that's the Dutch on top. So we go to the English. It says here, what happens when instead of the standard 18 months, we age our Grand Cru for 10 years? The answer is the very first edition of Rodenbach Evolved, a series of our iconic Grand Cru that surprises you with its subtlety and complexity. Thanks to its exceptionally long aging in oak fodder number 95, the beer has an even more distinct wood character. The organic flavours of sour cherry, green apple, leather, oak and red fruits that have developed during the aging process are of sensational purity. Rodenbach Evolved Grand Cru aged 10 years is the ultimate proof that Flemish red ale has unequalled maturation capabilities. A true must-taste beer, and that is the statement from Rudy Gequire, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who is the brewmaster at Brouwerij Rodenbach. So yeah, this is pretty nice, I have to say. 750ml bottle, this one. I want to say that I paid about 225 Hong Kong dollars for this, so that's maybe about £22.50 sterling, 25 euros, and maybe about $27.50 American, you know, something like that. So this beer was a little bit pricey, but you know, it was a bit of a, you know, fuck it, why not kind of moment. So yeah, that's that. As I said earlier, the Grand Cru series composes 2/3 older ale, in this case the one that's been aged in the fodder for 10 years, and 1/3 younger ale. I'm not sure exactly how old the younger ales are, if they're completely fresh or what. But yeah, basically a portion of the beer is always blended in, basically aged in these oak fodders, then they'll bring it out and they'll blend it up with a younger ale and put it into the bottles. You can age these beers yourself in the bottle if you really want to, but yeah, I think that's probably going to have more of an effect with the bigger ones, like the Vin de Cereal, which is the 10% beer that these guys do. One that I do want to get a hold of, I've never actually seen it. But yeah, Rodenbach Evolved Grand Cru, aged 10 years, 2023 vintage, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I bought this one before the turn of the year. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what we do. We'll take off the little metal top on this one first. And yeah, now we need to pop the cork. Yeah, so nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. And we'll get this guy out and into the glass. There we go, that's a lovely pour. I think that's just under half of the bottle poured into the glass there. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one then, you can see that it's poured with a bit of finger of a frothy, I would say, very slightly beige coloured head there, kind of light fawn colour. Not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera there, but it's got this lovely light fawn colour to it. You can see medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid and a few more kind of foamy ones going up to the top of the, as you go up toward the top of the head there. Colour wise, this one is lovely. How would we describe that? It's like a kind of bright stained mahogany, kind of copper colour, but it's got a little bit more of a kind of reddish tint to it, as you would expect with this beer. Just remember the other series instantly, it's Caractère Rouge, which are the ones that have the macerated fruits added to the blend. That's the 5th series that was missing. So yeah, I was going to say, it's got this almost kind of like cherry wine red. It reminds me of the Gibson SG guitars, you know, that classic heritage cherry colour that they have. I think that's a good way to describe the colour of this particular beer. There is a little bit of carbonation visible in this one or two bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, but yeah, you can see carbonation going up toward the surface of the beer. That head has faded away incidentally, and you've just got a nice little bit of a foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But I'd say the beer, it has a little touch of natural haze to it, but it's pretty clear, to be honest with you. I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer, to be honest with you, considering what style it is within the realms of possibility of a Flanders red. So I think we should move on to the aroma section of the video. So let's do that and have a smell of this thing. This is going to be beautiful, I'm sure. So let's do this. Oh yeah, this is interesting. It's been a wee while, a good wee while, since I've smelled like a proper Belgian Flanders red. This is awesome. It's got a real the thing that's striking me about this beer is how kind of dry the aroma is actually. You know, we've talked about oak on the channel many times. European oak for me tends to be a little bit drier, I would say, than the American oak. It's a different species of tree, of course. But yeah, the oaky character in this one, the dryness of it's going to jump right out of the glass at you. But the aroma of these things is wonderful. I could sit and smell beers all day. I just love the aromas that you get. But yeah, this thing is absolutely lovely. So let's just, it gives you everything you want. You've got the woodiness in there, you've got a bit of the malty sweetness and things, a good little bit of red fruit, and you are just getting that little touch of green component out of it as well. So let's just break the aroma down and describe the beer a little bit more in depth for you. So the backbone of this beer is obviously that lovely big oaky character. So yeah, within the oaky side of things, you do get that little bit of vanilla, of course, that you would expect. You always get a little bit of vanilla out of oak, I would say. A wee bit more bright in the American oak than the European oak, I would say. A bit smoother in the European oak. But yeah, the oaky character in this one is actually pretty dry. It almost has just a little touch of a spiciness to it, which is something I didn't quite remember about this beer first off. But yeah, on top of that oaky character, you do get a little bit of the kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, which is really interesting. But then yeah, for me, there's a bit of brown breadiness in there, you know, like a sort of wholemeal brown bready bread crust, and a bit of like a sweet, bit of a mix of like almost sweet rye bread and sweet kind of wholemeal brown bread. And then above that you get some brown sugars. There's a little bit of like a toasty caramelly note to this one. So yeah, a little bit of that toasty caramelly note in there. And then yeah, you've also got that little bit of toasty caramel, oily sweet caramel as well actually. And then yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really very nice. So yeah, big oily sweet caramel in there, toasty caramel as well, and yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, I can say, is very nice. The one thing I will say about the malty and woody side of this one is that the sheer impact of the sour side of things in this beer kind of pushes that away. And I remember the Rodenbachs that I've had previously being a little bit more rounded in a sense, like the malty character and the woody side of things just being a bit smoother and a bit more prominent, and just the aroma being a bit more balanced. This one, the sharpness, it's the dryness of the wood that comes out and the sharpness of the fruit, I think, are the things that really come to the fore in the aroma. There's a tiny little touch of nuttiness to this one as well, like a pecan or an almond or something like that. And even if we sugar the beer up a little bit more aggressively, you do get a little bit more of that. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, and one thing we should talk about with sour beers is the mentality of hopping. It's always interesting to talk to sour beer brewers about this. What they used to do back in the day, or they still do with these kind of more traditional sour beers, is that they add hops into the beer that are older and have lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, because you don't want that big bitter component of the hops to take away from the sourness of the beer. Many modern sour beer brewers, as a result of this, don't add hops to the beer, especially when they're adding fruit adjuncts into it, because that suppresses your green component anyway. So yeah, talking about the hopping side of things in sour beers is quite interesting. With this beer though, I get the impression that it's got maybe a little bit of German noble hop in it, or the Belgian noble hops, I think, are kind of similar except a little bit more earthy and herbal. So yeah, with this beer, you do get a little bit of that kind of earthy herbal note coming out of the green component. This one, there's certainly some grassy character in there and a little bit of floral aromaticity. Quite a bit of that, I bet, will be coming from the younger third of this beer rather than the older 2/3. In the fodder, a lot of that will have dropped out, I'm sure. Maybe the earthy herbal side is coming more from the 10-year-old beer, and the grassy floral side of things is coming from the younger beer that's been added in. So you still get a bit of green component out of this one. If you age the beer in the bottle, of course, a little bit, that probably would drop out. But certainly in the blend, you do have a little bit of grassy and floral character, which I find very interesting. So yeah, aroma wise, this is really pretty good. On the fruity side of things, it's interesting because you do obviously have that really sharp juicy fruity character in this one. The sour cherries come out of this beer at you really abruptly, but underneath that you do start to get, there's a little bit of like a juicy fig, maybe a little bit of like prune or something like that. And I can see why they say, fresh green apple on the aroma as well. You certainly get that almost like cidery or vinegary kind of note out of the beer in a sense, and that's at the kind of top of the front of your nose. And yeah, once your nose adjusts to that, you get a lot more of the complexity out of this one. They say there's leathery character in this beer. There's a little bit of that, but I think that's a descriptor that should come out a bit more in the flavour than in the aroma, to be honest with you. But as I say, the thing that surprises me about this particular beer is just kind of how dry and things it is in comparison to some of the younger Rodenbachs, if we can say that. So yeah, the aroma of this one is very interesting. As I always say, take a bit of time just to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think at this point we've said everything we need to. Let's go on and actually have a taste of this beer. So yeah, this one is the Rodenbach Evolved, part of the Grand Cru series, a 6% Flanders red ale, 67% or 2/3 10-year-old or 10-year aged Flanders red with a younger Flanders red blended into it, the final third. Let's get stuck into this one, the very first edition of this beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost, santé. Let's do this. Oh yeah. Really damn good. Really, really damn good. Yeah. It is just, it's so smooth. Yeah, you get the dryness, you do get that, the oakiness from what I remember in this one. It's just that little bit drier, but this beer for me, it is, whenever I try Rodenbach, it's just it brings back a whole bunch of nostalgia. This is lovely. This really is very, very good. And you have, one thing that's quite interesting about Rodenbach is you do have beer lovers who are proper Rodenbach nerds, and they know all about the different characters of each fodder and things like this, and they can tell you about fodder 62 or 29 or whatever. There are some Rodenbach lovers who get that much into it. So yeah, probably the next edition of this one will be from another fodder, and it will show you slightly different characters and things like that. And there will be some experts out there that will be able to tell you about that. For me, I just appreciate the kind of more general flavour of the particular beer and the particular series that this one comes from. But yeah, my impression of this evolved series is that it's very, very smooth, it's very, very clean, but it just has that little bit more dryness to it in the aftertaste compared to some of the other ones. I think a number of the other beers just have a wee bit more kind of sweetness that comes to the fore in the aftertaste. They show you a little bit more of that Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type flavour. But yeah, this one is most definitely more woody, and yeah, you get that kind of leathery component out of it as well. But beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. I don't think there's any disputing that with this beer. But yeah, let's break this one down then and describe it a wee bit more in depth for you. So, middle third of the palate then. The backbone of the beer is obviously that lovely, smooth European oak in there. As I've often said in these reviews, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, your sweeter flavours come out further forward. So within the woody character, you can really feel a gradient. At the back of your tongue, it is just slightly drier and almost has a very, very slight spice to it. But then, yeah, as you move further and further forward, you're starting to get the kind of vanilla and sweeter flavours from the oaky character. So, yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice. So, in terms of the bit above the wood, you do have this kind of, it's almost like when you do barrel aging, you get like the spirit layer, the rum, the bourbon, the whiskey, whatever. You do get that lovely layer of like, it's almost like slightly vinous, so you get that layer of almost like, more like a kind of white winey character in this case, which is quite interesting when you think that it is, a lot of these beers have had cherries and things like that in them. So yeah, there will have been cherries and stuff like that in fodder number 95 over the years, as I'm sure. But yeah, you do have this little layer of kind of like vinous quality sitting above the wood, and then you start to get the maltier aspects of the beer. So yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there. I think from the aroma, when I was describing it as rye bread, the flavour doesn't really come across like that. It is more like a kind of wholemeal brown bread. So yeah, fresh kind of brown bready bread crust in there. Above that, you have a more kind of fluffy and slightly sweet wholemeal brown bready character, and then within that bready character, there's a little touch of nuttiness for sure, and the nuttiness I think comes out into the aftertaste with the woody character. So the nuttiness and the woodiness in this beer for me are really nice. It's a bit more like a pecan than an almond, I would say. But yeah, there is that little bit of dryness that comes out of this one, which I think is really, really nice. So, yeah, I think the nuttiness and the bread and everything, this is really nice. It just adds to the kind of sweetness of the beer. I think the more you drink of this one, the more you get that kind of sweeter side of things out of the beer. But above the brown bread, you have a little bit of a toasty brown sugar. Then you have a layer of that more leathery, mix of leathery brown sugar. And then in the dead center of your palate, you can feel there's like a more oily sweet caramel in the middle. And then a little touch of more Werther's original butter candy butterscotch, and maybe even a little hint of like McVitie's digestive biscuit. So yeah, your brown sugar layer in this one, toasty brown sugar, leathery brown sugar, like McVitie's digestive biscuit, Werther's original butter candy butterscotch, and then in the dead centre of your palate, it's like a straight up sweet caramel, and that is of course a little bit of the alcohol flavour coming out. But I think at this point we've covered the middle third of your palate. So let's go to the back third of the palate. Now I've often said the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, for me, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of like brown bread crust in the bottom, but then yeah, it's the fluffy sweet brown bread in there. Then the base of that back third of your palate is more of a kind of dry oaky, the dry oaky side of things. It feels a little bit more spicy on the back third of your palate. Then you've got that kind of almost vinous layer that I was talking about before, which just feels a little bit drier too. Then you've got the more kind of bread crusty type layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, still a little touch dry. Then you've got the more kind of fluffy brown bready character in there, which has a wee bit more sweetness to it, but also still that little bit of dryness. And then above that you get the more toasty brown sugary type character coming out of this one. So yeah, you can feel that. Then above everything else you're getting the yeasty side of the beer. So let's have a little look at that yeasty component on the back third of your palate. So the yeasty side of this beer for me, it's kind of interesting. It has this almost like the oatmeal-y type flavour, which I wasn't quite expecting. But yeah, your yeasty character in the dead centre, it's like this sweet, wet, almost oatmeal-y, brown bready kind of character. And as you move out from that, you get a little bit more of a grainy brown bread in there, and then you get a little bit of an almost like toasty bread crusty character around the edge of it. So the yeasty character in the back third of your palate with this one is really quite interesting, in fact. Yeah, there's a lot of subtleties to the flavour of this beer, which I think are just really lovely. Yeah, but definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, the flavour just kind of condenses down a little bit and squashes together. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then in the back corners of your palate, we talked about hopping in the beer earlier, but in the back corners of your palate, there is a little touch of earthiness in there. And as you move further forward, the beer is just a little bit more herbal. And then you can feel that herbal character spreads forward quite a wee bit. There's just a little touch of floral aromaticity behind the front corners of your palate, but then round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is a little bit lighter and more grassy, and it's got a little bit of almost leafiness to it as well. But your green component feels quite wet in this one. As I said earlier, sour beers like this will use older hops that have lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency. So you know, your green component is very smooth in this particular beer. But let's look at the fruity side of things on that front third of your palate. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. The brown bready bread crust in the base and the more fluffy sweet brown bread above that. But then yeah, the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the oakiness in there, you've got that slightly vinous layer, but within the oaky character I think you're getting a lot more vanilla on that front third of your palate too. But yeah, above that you get a bit of the brown bread, and then you get the kind of smooth side of the brown sugars in this one. So yeah, the way that this goes together is really nice in that sense. And because it's a sour beer, we do need to talk about impact flavour. So let's look at that sour component first. So yeah, when you take this beer in, you do get that little bit of you know, kind of sour acidity coming in just behind the kind of front tip of your tongue. But as I've often said, for me, a good sour beer is one that just mellows out really, really nicely, and this beer does that beautifully. So just behind that front tip of your tongue, you can feel the acidity coming in, and it just mellows out and gives you this lovely smooth, just almost you know, the leathery character, I think, from the sourness. It just mellows out really, really nicely into the aftertaste. But of course, the fruity side of things, you've always got that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters roll their way out of the beer too, so you can feel that sort of leathery character underneath the fruit for me. So the fruity side of this one, yeah, you do have that kind of like dried cherry, I would say, like a lot of, you've got the sharper, at the back of that front 30 palate, you've got the sharper cherry in there. Underneath that, you're getting things like, you know, a slightly datey, oily pear, sultana type flavour. As you move further forward, I want to say there's like a little touch of like a sort of red currant or something like that. And it's almost, you know, it's just got you can feel, particularly on that front half of the front third of your tongue, you can feel that fresh green apple flavour that they're talking about, that sort of just acidity coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got the cherries on top, like a date, sultana, pear type thing. And as you move further forward, there's a wee touch of like figgy, red curranty type flavour, and then yeah, you have this you have this oily just this oily, fresh green apple character coming out into the aftertaste too. I think at that we've said everything we really need to about the flavour of this beer. This thing is beautiful, but compared to the other Rodenbachs, as I say, this one is a lot kind of drier and has a little bit more woodiness and things like that. So that's what makes it very, very interesting. Yeah, definitely try this one if you get the chance. You certainly won't regret it. It's a bit pricier, but you know, if you love sour beers like I do, you don't care. So yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer, yeah, for me, this one, I think it's right in the middle of the spectrum, to be honest with you. I've always found that for me, sour beers have always felt a little bit lighter in terms of mouthfeel than you know, regular beers, if that makes sense. But yeah, right in the middle of the spectrum, I would say. So yeah, mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. The beer has a slight like silkiness to it almost, but a slight oiliness as well, I think, and also a little bit of cleanliness. The IBU of this beer, I think, is going to be very low, probably like, you know, 10 IBUs or something like that. You do have a bit of green component remaining in this one, like I said, but the malty backbone, is, say, you've got the dryness of the wood. Yeah, so you've got the dryness of the wood in there, the smoothness and sweetness, the smoothness of the bread, this kind of dryness, the sort of toastiness and sweetness, the dry sweetness, if you like, of the brown sugars, and then yeah, you've got all the nice kind of fruity character coming out of this one. So yeah, the way everything kind of pieces together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice actually. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer, this one, and definitely worth trying. The sour side of it's very well balanced, the fruitiness is great. I love everything about this one, but not surprised because I do love Rodenbach. So yeah, I think we can leave it there. This one was the Rodenbach Evolved, a 6% Flanders Red Ale, part of their Grand Cru series, the very first vintage of this one from 2023. So keep your eyes peeled for this series going forward. We might need to try this every year and see if I can become a proper Rodenbach nerd, because I do love this brewery. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Rodenbach as well, and we will see about reviewing some of the other ones that we haven't covered yet so far. I don't think we've done the Alexander, if I remember correctly, and I do want to try the Vin de Cereal. That could be a really, really interesting one. The higher ABV. I'd love to see them do the Evolved series on that as well with the higher ABV. That could be really interesting. Till the next time, check out my social media, check out Brouwerij Rodenbach's social media, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, Prost, and Santé.